You know, moms and dads, farmers and workers and people coming together and struggling. Very similar to me. For those who don't know about Love Canal, I was a resident in the community. I did live there. I learned about it from a newspaper article as opposed to my government, who knew in years before I learned about it. The city, the state, the county, the federal, all knew we were being poisoned. Just like all of you who are living by toxics, they all know you're getting poisoned. The state of Massachusetts or New Hampshire or Maine or Vermont or New York or Connecticut or Rhode Island, I think I covered them all right, said it's okay. Every time they give a permit, they say it's okay. Every time they let the asphalt plant build it, they say it's okay. It's okay to poison you. It's okay to poison the air. And back in 1978, they said it was okay to poison our families. And I said, no. It is not okay. This is not the way you run a country. This is not a way we run our planet. This is certainly not human and moral and ethical. At Love Canal, I was this really quiet, shy person. I know it's really hard to believe. Sometimes I look in the mirror and say, really? Maybe it was just my imagination. I come from a family of 6, one of these Irish Catholic families. People in Boston know them well. And all the children always struggle to try to move things forward. But I come from a similar place. I didn't know how to organize. I was afraid of knocking on my neighbor's door. I was afraid to speak in public, as hard as that may be for you to believe now. I was intimidated. Oh, my God. The governor came, and he sat at the table across from me, and I couldn't speak. Honest to God. It was like, I couldn't speak. I was so intimidated. And it was through the power of my neighbors, through the power of helpers, that I was able to overcome those obstacles. And I say that because anybody in this room who says they can't do something, the chances are you probably can. You just need to be patient with yourself, and you can do it. So at Love Canal, we organized our neighborhood. I learned a lot. And it's interesting because now it's 30-some years later, or 30 as I like to call it. And the solutions are the same. So at Love Canal, where there was 20,000 tons of chemicals coming into the environment, exposing my family and my neighbor's family, we believed that all we needed to do was prove beyond the shadow of a doubt, using the law, that our children were sick and our adults were sick and our families were sick, and they were being made sick from this chemical that was leaking from the dump under the ground, through the basements, and into our air. If we could prove that, we would have our problem resolved. In our case, we wanted relocation. So we went out and we got some of the best scientists, and they did a fabulous job, and they put together a health study, and we demonstrated, clearly demonstrated, 56% of our children were born with birth defects. 56% of our children had 3 ears, double rows of teeth, extra fingers, extra toes, or were mentally retarded. We showed, with the help of volunteer scientists, we showed that out of 22 pregnancies at the time of the study, only 4 normal babies were born. The rest of those pregnancies ended in miscarriages, stillborns, or birth-defected children. Now, I know many of you, regardless of the issue you're working on, you go looking for the evidence to prove that you are right, just as we did. Still do, I guess, to a certain extent. I wrote a book on dioxin, Dick showed you. And it was absolutely devastating to find out that the science will not set you free, with all due respect to the scientists in this room. That the science was one of the things we could use in our struggle. But in the struggle, when we presented the science, our opponents, who had way more money than we do, brought in a whole army study a scientist. And suddenly we had this dueling of experts back and forth arguing about parts per something. And the local people couldn't engage in the conversation, right? It was way up here. And it was a problem. So we decided that the science is really important. We need to demonstrate that there is a problem. We need to say that there is a problem. But that in of itself is not enough. So then we decided to do what some folks did with Jan, is to go talk to a lawyer about a lawsuit. This is America. Everybody can sue everybody about everything. It's just our way, right? So in that sort of mindset of being a very proud American, I thought I could just sue somebody and they will fix it. Or give me money and I could just move away. I didn't care which one it was. And when we went to talk to our attorney, we found out that in America it is not illegal to poison people. Imagine that it is not illegal to poison people or the planet for those who are working on climate change and other natural resource issues. In fact, they give business permits and license to allow you to kill people and things. It's just that you only can kill a few things a little bit at a time. It goes back to the parts per whatever. So you get a license, and the license is, and I was just talking to Ellie, the license is sort of like a hunting and fishing license, right? So you get your hunting license, and you can take a certain amount of deer only at a certain time of year. Or fish, if you're a fisher person. However, with the licenses they give to corporations, those licenses are taking human lives. They call them risk assessments, right? And they're taking human lives. And the difference between a hunting and fishing license and a license to pollute and then kill or maim is that a hunting and fishing license, when you get it, you can only take the adults. You cannot take the baby deer. You cannot take the does during mating time or when she's pregnant or whatever deers get, when they carry babies. In America, for people, our laws are set on human exposure that you can take lives. But in our case, the first thing to go is not the adults. It's our children. Our children are most vulnerable. They have tiny little bodies. They breathe more. They drink more. They ingest more food than the rest of us. How dare they? And you know how they do it? They do it when something they call their cost-benefit analysis. Because every single one of you, based on what salary you make in your community. So if you're a low-wealth community, whoa, doors are wide open, man. Because you're not worth anything. If you're a high-wealth community, you're probably pretty clean, quite honestly. We still love you. That they do cost-benefit analysis, and they decide where is the community who has the least amount of money to fight back, and that is where we're going to put this nasty stuff. This is not moral. This is not right. This is not the America that my parents told me and my school tried to convince me that I live in. This is not right. This is what we have to turn around. Okay, so you can go after the legal handles, and this is not to put those down. Those are incredibly important. They buy us time. You sometimes can win with a lawsuit. And the science piece is really important because we need to demonstrate why we need it to be changed. But the answer about change, how do we make a difference, is about politics. You need to, and what we've learned over the years, is you need to develop a political campaign. you can have a scientific campaign like we did. I forgot to tell you the best part. The state health department did come back and do a study at Love Canal, and they did find 56% of our children were birth defected. And then they said, it's because we're a random clustering of genetically defected people. And in Arizona, they said to this Latino population, where they had 12 young men in high school who had cancer, that it was because of their spicy foods. And in West Virginia, where we're doing a study around reproductive problems of miscarriages and birth defected children, they said the reason that's happening has nothing to do with coal, it has to do with incest. So our science is important. We have to show that babies are being harmed. But that's not the final answer. And the legal part is important. But we need to fight politically. What does that mean? That means don't fight with their rules, for God's sakes. How many of you have gone to a public meeting? How many of you spoke more than 3 minutes? How many of you spent days putting your testimony together instead of organizing your neighbors? A public hearing is a hearing that is established for the purpose of controlling us. And they do a really good job, I might add. You work really hard, you go into there, you have 3 minutes, 5 minutes, I don't know, depending on what state you are. Some of them are a little more liberal. I actually saw one give 10 minutes to talk about the problems and the solution. And then after you testify, you go back away, and that's it. And then they print it in some public record, and maybe they'll respond to it. It is a setup to keep you busy. It's busy work. It's busy work. That is not to say we ought not to go to these hearings, and we ought not to put together those papers, because we do need a counterbalance to our opponents. But we should not engage our entire community in sitting in this boring room listening to the mundane run-on of one person after the other saying the same thing over and over and over and over. This is not how we win our fights. So you go to the public meeting and you all wear costumes. We had a group in Alabama, we're talking Southern Baptist, conservative, all dressed up as zombies. The next meeting it said no zombies allowed. They had a lawsuit, free speech for zombies, right? Because when you're all walking in as zombies, then it says we are together, we're willing to take risks, we're going to step outside that box. We are taking you on, all of us. You're not going to separate our scientists from our hydrologists, from our epi person, from our whatever and whatever. We are together. We are zombies. Public hearings are set up for them to say that they allowed public participation. If we buy into that, we buy into their rules and we lose. We need to be creative, out-of-the-box thinkers. So I suggest everybody go home when it's done and put together a toolbox. Now, every community is uniquely different. So not everything would work in every community. Like zombies worked in Alabama, who'd have thought? But, maybe they won't work in your neighborhood. But put together a toolbox. So in the toolbox, think about it. What could you do? What do you need in the toolbox in order to win this fight? You need a hammer. What's your hammer? In politics, the hammer is the power of vote. If you can show the politicians that you can change public opinion, essentially change the voting population, you win.